We're on a mission from God.
And now for something completely different.
Let's get ready to rumble! Yeah, baby, yeah!
This is Pastor Jolly John Lekumsky, and this is Wrestling with the Basics. And I wish we were back in the old days when we were recording in the studio and we had all of our sound effects and everything, because this certainly would warrant a drum roll and a trumpet flourish, because guess who's back with us today? We have our old companion, our old friend, Reverend Matt Clark. Matt, it is so good to have you back here as co-host on Wrestling with the Basics.
Well,
so,
gosh,
Matt, what have you been doing?
Well, thanks.
What have you been
It's good to be
doing
back
these
with
last-
you. I've
Yeah.
missed talking with you, John. Truly, I have. It's been, what, about 5-6 months, I guess, that I've been away in a little hiatus from Wrestling with the Basics. Good to be with you and good to be connecting with our listeners again. What I've been up to is a lot of homework again, John. Working on a degree from Concordia Seminary here in St. Louis, one that's tailored especially for guys like me, parish pastors, pastors who are in congregations, and it's the Doctor of Ministry program. And so I've been in that program for a few years now, but finally wrapping up the coursework. So I had 2 classes this past semester, which kept me pretty busy, so able to focus a little more on those courses and get those finished up. Which I'm happy to report. The classes are done. I do have a few days on campus in January still, but other than that, the coursework for the program is done. And now the next step is to focus on what they call the major applied project. So that's going to be a big project connected here to Ascension, and that will be a 1-year process. So that's where I'm at, John. That's what I've been up to. And again, good to be back here on Wrestling with the Basics.
And I was really excited because I wanted to introduce you as Dr. Matt, because that will really, that'll make this such a classier show.
Sure will.
I don't think we've ever had a doctor, but apparently you were telling me I can't say that yet.
I think the seminary would frown upon that, John.
Okay.
No,
Right.
still, many different steps in this process, but we're getting close. We're getting close, but my major applied project still needs to be approved. Still need to do that work, but Lord willing, one of these days, the Doctor of Ministry degree will be complete, and I'll be finished. So, but we're getting there.
So it would
Not
be
yet.
it would be okay if from here on out we can say Matt almost a Dr. Clark. That would be okay, wouldn't it?
I suppose so. It's kind of a mouthful, though, John.
Well, but like I said, it just classes up the whole show.
Sure.
I'm sure all of the higher educated people say, "Oh, well, you need to listen to that Wrestling with the Basics because there's that almost a Doctor Matt Clark is on there." Okay.
You're making me
All right, well,
blush,
Matt,
John. No.
yeah. Oh, I wish I could see you. I wish I could see you. So
No, I
Matt,
think, John, if people are looking for classy programming, there's other shows on KFUO they can listen to other than wrestling.
come on, Matt. So what we want to do today, because people are probably thinking, well, let's have a show.
Yeah, really. No.
But I'm sorry we're going to make you wait a little bit longer because there's some things that we need to wrap up from last week's episode, Matt. My wife, Lynn actually filled in for you and did an excellent job.
No
We were
surprise
talking
there.
about, well, yeah, because she's a sharp gal, And we were talking about a verse to start the new year with, and it was the 6th verse of Psalm 23. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And I said, Lynn, since you're going to be the guest host, could you pick out a joke that would kind of symbolize and indicate that the high quality of humor, because that's everyone knows us. We may not be known as classy, but we are I think were actually described as a kind of a funny, a laugh-filled show
Occasionally, I would
on the
think so.
website.
Yeah.
Okay. So I said, give us a joke that would kind of just, you think would meet the high quality of humor that we have. And so we didn't get to do it last week, but I said, that's okay. Matt and I will start off with the joke. And so she sent it to me this morning right before we started recording. And I didn't realize it was a novel. It like goes on for like 5 pages. So I'll try to shorten it up here as best I can.
Very good.
So anyway, a mother was concerned about her kindergarten son walking to school, and he didn't want his mother to walk with him. And she wanted to give him the feeling that he had some independence, but yet know that he was safe. And you understand that because your son just came back from college, Noah, right? And
Oh, yeah.
that's
Yeah.
a big thing to say you're off on your own now. So this is how the mother was going to handle it. She asked a neighbor if she would please follow her kindergartner to school in the morning, staying at a distance so he wouldn't notice. She said that since she was up early with her toddler, anyway, it would be a good way for them to get some exercise as well. So she agreed. So anyway, little Timmy, because it's always little Timmy, you know. Do you ever know a joke where it isn't little Timmy? Anyway,
All the good
so
ones
little
are little
Timmy's
Timmy.
walking to school, and behind him then is this neighbor and her little girl, and they did this for a whole week. And after a while, kids started noticing that little Timmy was being followed by this mother and her little girl, and they said, Timmy, do you know who these people are? These people that are following you? And Timmy nonchalantly replied, yeah, I know who she is. And well, his friend says, well, who is she? Well, that's Shirley Goodness, Timmy replied, and her daughter Marcy. Yeah, you see, Shirley Goodness and Marcy shall follow me all the days of my life. You get that? Shirley Goodness
Yeah.
and Marcy.
I see the Psalm 23 connection. Yeah. This is why we
yeah,
put the
yeah,
fun
it-
in the fundamentals, right, John?
Well, it kind of bothered me that I asked Lynn to pick out a joke that would kind of, show off the high quality of humor, and that she would choose this joke, And then what really bothered me is I thought, yeah, that's absolutely probably the best example of our humor that
This
you
is on
could
par
find.
with this is on par with what we usually do. And leaving it,
Pretty
Lynn, to
much,
pick
pretty-
a wholesome joke, a biblical joke,
That's right.
and a Psalm 23 joke.
Yeah. So Shirley Goodness and Marcy.
And Marcy.
But here's just not to get to more serious stuff, Matt. Here's the 2 things that we didn't really get to talk about, and I just wanted to wrap this up from last week. We did mention that the English translation here doesn't catch the nuances of the Hebrew. In fact, if you've got a modern English translation, you'll notice that it's in the footnotes. But who pays attention to the footnotes anyway? Because for one thing, it doesn't say follow me. That's what it doesn't. It doesn't say that in Hebrew. It says pursue me. And I think you and I actually talked about this some time ago. So it's not that goodness and mercy is just coming along behind, but it's actually going after you. It's dogging you. That's what it's doing. And the same thing with the word dwell. It doesn't actually say dwell. The nuance there is I will return. I will return to the house of the Lord. And why I thought those things were important is because you may think this is David lounging on his couch in his palace in Jerusalem, writing this beautiful poetry. But no, this poem is written when he is being pursued. He is pursued by people who don't want his goodness and certainly don't want to treat him with mercy. I don't know if people realize when David says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, that's not being poetic. That's a reality. He's running for his life. He's hiding out in a cave, and all of a sudden, here's his enemy in the same cave that he is. So I thought, let's preserve that, the fact that this is pursuing him, the realization that even though their enemy is pursuing him, at the same time, God's goodness and mercy, the hesed, that steadfast love is pursuing him. And that he literally has been separated from the house of the Lord. But he knows that someday he's going to return to that house of the Lord. So any comments you want to make about those 2 things, Matt? And then I have one last thing, and we'll move on to what you have, which actually ties into this. Go ahead, Matt.
Well, I think it's just beautiful to remember again, like we've talked about, that the lives of David and these other Old Testament figures, they're not perfect. They're not problem free by any means. But yeah, he's surrounded by trouble. People are out to get him, Saul and others. And we think about our own lives then, in our lives, the heart troubles, the heartaches that we have, whatever it is that we feel like we're walking through in any particular time. And maybe especially I think of people, boy, around the holidays who have lost loved ones and feel very much like they're in a valley of the shadow of death, to know that same promise for us too, that we too are being pursued too. I love that picture, John, by God's goodness and mercy, his steadfast love. It's chasing after us, pursuing us, no matter where we're at or what our circumstances are right now too.
Yeah, and so absolutely, we are being pursued. The devil is a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour, and our own flesh wars against us, as Paul says, and certainly the world is not in favor of us. But to realize that no, but God's love, God's goodness, that's still pursuing us, and like it says in Romans, all things will work together again for our good. The other thing that we didn't get to talk about in this verse is that the English translation misses some of the poetic play on words, because the English translation talks about this goodness and mercy pursuing us all the days of our life, and that's real accurate. But then it says we'll dwell or return to the house of the Lord forever. But actually, there's a little play on words in there. I don't know if you knew that, Matt, because it actually repeats the word day. So for the first one, it's the days of our life. But in the second one, the dwelling, our returning to the house of the Lord, it's the length of days. It doesn't actually use the word forever. It has length of days. And I think that's a really nice thought too, that this pursuing, this feeling of being pursued, that is just temporary. It's just for here and now, just for this short time we call life. But that being in the house of the Lord, that dwelling and returning, that's the thing that goes on for a length of days. There's that contrast. That's a very, very long thing. And I think the translation is probably accurate, because the sense there is, that will be the forever thing. So whatever it is people might be struggling with, yeah, let's just remember, none of that's going to go on forever. But the blessings, the goodness, the steadfast love, the being there with our Lord and with our loved ones, that is the thing that will be for the length of days. So that's all I wanted to say about that. Matt, do you have any other comments?
Oh, just what a beautiful way to conclude. And I think of that hymn, the King of Love, my shepherd is, that puts this psalm to hymn verse, and it uses those words. And so through all the length of days, right? The hymn even uses those words. I like that image, the length of days. And I always think too.
I did not.
Yeah, John.
Go ahead.
Well, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
You're too polite. Okay, I just like that, how the hymn picks up on that too, because it is poetic. The length of days. And then the house of the Lord. It's his house. And I always think of, John, I think it's 14, right, where Jesus is saying that he's going to prepare a place for us. In his Father's house, there are many rooms. And what a beautiful picture that it truly is the house of the Lord. It is the Father's house. There's a place that he's preparing just for us, and we'll dwell there the length of days. Oh, what a comfort for, again, if we've lost those loved ones who have died in Christ, but, for us too, that promise is something that we can hold on to no matter what our circumstances in life are.
And thank you, Matt. Yeah, I didn't even think of that connection, but a perfect connection. Yeah, that's what he's doing. He's preparing for us a place in our Father's house again. So that's a really nice connection to the psalm there. And so you have yet another connection, though, because so Matt and I, we haven't done this for a while. We were talking about what would you like to do, Matt? And Matt said he'd like to talk about Absalom, which of course this could be the circumstances. That might have been when David wrote this psalm, because he was fleeing. He was apart from the tabernacle, the Ark of the Covenant, when his son Absalom was opposing him. He was being pursued in that situation. But before we talk about Absalom, Matt, why? Why would you be talking and concerned about Absalom? What brought that subject up for you?
Good question, John. So we were focusing on not just Absalom, but some other individuals too. So on our Wednesdays, as we gather together for our midweek services, preparing for Christ's coming. We looked at a sermon series. One of the reasons we use the sermon series is because different materials that are provided for not just worship, but also for devotional life and for children too, which was nice. But it focused on different sons in the Bible who were imperfect, but then always taking us back to the one who is the perfect son, Jesus Christ. So it looked at some imperfect guys. So we looked at people like Cain, and we looked at Absalom, and some of these individuals that, boy, you wouldn't think of preaching on necessarily. So I thought that was kind of fun. How often do you get to preach on Absalom, right? The only thing, my only beef with the sermon series is, they give suggestions on preaching themes and things like that. There was only 3 sons, and we had 4 Wednesdays in Advent this year.
Oh.
So,
Yep. Yeah. Because Christmas was on the
yeah,
weekend.
so exactly. So I come up with my own 4th son, and we looked at Solomon for that. So I thought here on Wrestling at the Basics, maybe to look at if we have time, 2 of those sons of David. So a nice Psalm 23 David connection. 2 of his Psalms, Absalom and then Solomon, both of whom we'll see are pretty imperfect guys.
So yeah, well, thank you. That does make sense because I'm thinking, well, man, I'm thinking of the Christmas story. I don't remember Absalom showing up.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe I better read a little closer. But I see. So the tie-in was the sons,
Yes.
even
Yes.
as Jesus was the Son of God. All right. So where do you want me to go? I got my Bible, my electronic Bible, all ready to go here.
Well, let's look at.
What,
So eventually we'll look at 2 Samuel 18. 2 Samuel 18,
Okay.
beginning with verse 24. So as you're turning there, John, on your electronic Bible, just to give some background about Absalom, right? Because, if we read everything there was about Absalom, we'd be almost as long as your joke, John. That's how.
No, it couldn't be that long, could it? Okay.
So we'd be here a while. So I'm going to try just a brief recap here. So when we look at Absalom's life, we look at Absalom, and he is one of David's 19 sons. That's a lot of sons.
Oh, wow.
From multiple wives, several different wives. And I think that's kind of a red.
Thanks for clarifying that, because otherwise the women out there going, what? 19 children? But yeah, there are numerous wives, yeah.
Well, and I think that's a red flag for us. So already it's probably not good to have multiple wives and children from all these different spouses, because you know what's going to happen, right? There's going to be rivalry.
Oh,
There's enough rivalry between biological siblings. Imagine if you had all of these, almost in competition, right? With these half brothers and sisters that you grow up with. And that seems to be the case here. Absalom, just to make a long story short, he has his half brother named Amnon murdered. Amnon was a pretty terrible guy, but still, to murder your half brother is pretty low too, I would think. And so Absalom, as a result of that, he flees the kingdom. So it's a big mess. So we kind of fast forward a few years. Joab, he's the captain of King David's army at the time, and he convinces David to bring Absalom back. He had fled away, convinces him to bring him back because he sees just how much David misses his beloved son, Absalom. So Absalom does come back.
Matt, I just want to clarify. So there is no hidden motive in what Job's doing here. He just honestly is concerned about his friend David, right?
Yeah, he cares about David. David's king at this time.
Okay.
And Joab is, the captain of the army. And he's concerned for David. The king is distraught. This is his beloved son, Absalom, and he's gone. So David invites him to return. Absalom does. But when he does, he goes back to kind of his scheming ways. Absalom uses his good looks to kind of persuade people to follow him. So the Bible describes Absalom as someone with really good looks, handsome from the tip of his toes to the top of his head, long, thick, flowing hair, good-looking guy. It seems like one of those guys that's got it all. And Absalom,
Matt,
yeah,
it sounds like you and me in our younger days.
Yeah, well, younger days. What do you mean, John? Still to death, right?
Well, man, the whole war point here. Come on. I
think this is.
have you started growing hair since we quit recording?
I have to say, it's a good thing this is radio, right, John?
Yeah. Okay.
Not TV.
I have wedding pictures of myself where my hair is down to my shoulders, Matt.
Oh,
But, I don't think you ever did. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So Absalom, go look in long-haired Absalom. For 4 years, he kind of campaigns for himself. He stands out the front gate of the city and and says things like, if I was in charge around here, boy, things would be a whole lot better. So after this campaigning, he sees that time is right for a coup. He tries to take over. So he leaves Jerusalem again. He sends out a message. Absalom is going to be king at Hebron. Come on to Hebron. We're going to make Absalom king. And so thousands of Israelites, they join his rebellion. They try to make Absalom the king. So you can imagine what this does to poor David, the dad, Absalom's dad, the real king. It leaves him little choice. He has to assemble his own army. He has to protect himself, protect Jerusalem. He has to protect even his position as the Lord's anointed, right? The guy that's chosen by God himself to be king. So his army goes out and battles Absalom's army. And David has this one request as the army goes out: deal kindly with Absalom. That's David's request. Come what may, please deal with Absalom gently. Which, boy, what love David has for his son, who's just rebelled against him, to be dealt with gently. So the battle occurs. Absalom, his army, it looks like it's defeated. So Absalom tries to flee, and we have this account in the Old Testament scriptures where Absalom is riding, trying to flee, and his long flowing hair, gets caught under the branches of a tree. And in the branches, his hair is caught, and he's hanging there, basically. He's vulnerable. So guess who comes upon him? Joab, the captain, the general of David's army, and he kills defenseless Absalom. He throws 3 spears into Absalom, in fact, and Absalom dies as a result of it. So that's the end of Absalom. So where our reading picks up, and we'll see how much time we have here, John, but as the reading picks up, there's a couple messengers that come to David that give him news of the battle. They tell David, Absalom, your enemies have been defeated. Great news. But it seems like in the midst of this news, all that David cares about is really one thing. All he cares about is Absalom. How is Absalom doing? And that's where our reading picks up. As I look at our timer, John, we're running short.
Yeah, we're almost out of time.
We're almost out of time, so we're going to save some of this for next time. But suffice it to say, David is grieved over Absalom's death.
And that's okay. That is a reason to listen again to Wrestling with the Basics, because you have this rather obscure, kind of strange story in many ways. Why does God allow his beloved, why does he allow his son David to have all these struggles and trials? And of course, it raises questions about Joab and the fact that I thought he wanted the son to return, and now he kills the son. And of course, I guess the biggest question you'll have to answer when we gather together next week is, what in the world does this have to do with us?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you bet. And I think as we deal with that, I think the one question to maybe leave with our listeners is, what do we have in common with Absalom? When we think of ourselves, what do we have in common with him? And maybe it's the long flowing hair, John. Maybe maybe it's the good looks. Maybe not. But the one thing I think we do have in connection with Absalom is a rebellious heart, right? A heart that rebels against not just our Father, but against our Father in heaven. And what is our Father in heaven's attitude toward us who have rebellious hearts? And we'll find that out next week. We hope our listeners tune in again.
On Wrestling with the Basics.